I will sell you one of the cars for 100,000 ringgits.
I accept. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So you guys have watched the previous video which show the contract between Miss Cherry and Tom. The question is it a valid, void or voidable contract? So here, my friend and I will have a discussion about their contract. But before that, let me introduce myself and my friend first. Assalamualaikum. Hello, my name is Nuraina Natasha binti Muhammad Rauzi and my number matric is DBF 201004.
Hi, my name is Nurul Balkis binti Mama Saad and my metric number is DBF 201003.
My name is Nafara Shakirin and my metric number is DBF 201005.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurdani Atira binti Muhammad Azhar. My metric number is DMS 181021.
Hello everyone, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nisha Tamanaria. My metric number is DMS 183005.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. My name is Rabiatul Adawiyah binti Misyan and my matrix number is DBF 201008.
Hi guys, my name is Nur Elta Shafika binti Ismail and my metric number is DBF 193006.
I am going to discuss about contract and agreement. First of all, I am going to talk about definition of contract. So, what is contract? According to Contract Act 1950, Section 2, Subsection H, definition of contract is an agreement enforceable by law. Many aspects of daily life involve contract, including buying property, applying for a car loan, signing employment-related paperwork, and agreeing to terms and conditions when buying products and service or using computer software. There are some general elements is required for the forming of a valid contract, which are proposal, acceptance, consideration, and intention to create a legal relation. Let's talk about agreement. According to Contract Act 1950, Section 2, Subsection E, every promise and every set of promise forming the consideration of each other is an agreement. Plus, according to Section 10, Subsection 1, all agreement is contract if they are made by the free consent of parties competent to contract for a lawful consideration with a lawful object and are not hereby expressly declared to be void. Agreement is a promise or a number of promises that are not contracting and are expected by the parties involved. An agreement is an expensive concept that includes only agreement or understanding between two or more parties about their rights and responsibilities with respect to on others. Such informal agreement often take on the form of gentleman agreement. That's all.
Is it a valid contract? No, because there is no intention to create legal relations.
According to the Contract Act 1950, Section 2, Subsection A, when one person signifies to another his willingness to do or abstain from doing anything with a view to obtaining the assent of that other to the act or abstinence, he is said to make a proposal.
An offer is a proposal made by one party to another indicating a willingness to enter a contract. So, proposal was made by Mr. Jerry to his friend Tom to buy one of his classic automobile for acceptance.
According to the Contract Act 1950, Section 2, Subsection B, when a person to whom the proposal is made signifies his assent or consent thereto, the proposal is said to be accepted. A proposal, when accepted, becomes a promise.
Tom accepts Mr. Jerry's offer to buy one of his one classic automobile.
Consideration in terms of law is subject matter.
Consideration must be an item of value, including money, a promise to act or not act, or specific goods in exchange for a promise or specific performance. So, Mr. Jerry is giving consideration to his friend Tom. Obviously, we can see one's intentions through the naked eye. The Contract Act is silent as to the intention to create legal relation as one of the requirements to form a valid contract.
In order to form a valid contract, there must exist an intention to create legal relations.
There is no intention was made by both parties because Tom hasn't paid yet for a classic automobile that cost 100,000 ringgit to Mr. Jerry.
What is the definition of consideration and what is the consideration for the Mr. Jerry and Tom in this case study? In the Contract Act 1915, Section 2, Subsection D, define that consideration are, when at the desire, is called a consideration for the promise. Moreover, under Section 26 in the Contract Act 1950, define that consideration is an agreement made without consideration is void. In conclusion, consideration is something valued to either promise or promisor that is usually cash or property will be exchanged between the promise and the promisor as the performance. The consideration for Mr. Jerry and Tom in this case study is executory consideration. Executory consideration is a consideration for a promise or an act which consideration has not yet been performed and which the party who is to perform is either bound by contract to perform or not. In conclusion, when the consideration on both sides is to move at a future date, it is called future consideration or executory consideration. It consists of an exchange of promises and each promise is a consideration for the other. As you can see the previous video of the situation of Tom and Mr. Jerry, I like to conclude it that referred to the words of illustration A to section 24 in the Contract Act 1950. Mr. Jerry agreed to sell one of the cars to Tom for Rm 100,000. Here, Tom promised to pay the sum of Rm 100,000 is the consideration for Tom promised to sell one of the cars. And Mr. Jerry promised to sell the car is the consideration for Tom promised to pay the Rm 100,000 and these are lawful consideration. According to the legal case of K. Murugesu v. Nadaraja 1980, the fact is the respondent was tenant of the appellant. Who instead the appellant to sell the house to him. The appellant finally relented and wrote on a piece of paper an agreement to sell the respondent the said house for Rm 26,000 within 3 months from the date of the agreement. Later, the appellant refused to sell and the respondent sued for specific performance. The issue is the appellant applied to the courts on the basis that the contract has no consideration. The federal court held that the agreement was the case of executory consideration is where a promise is made by one party in return for promise made by the other. In such a case, each promise is the consideration for the other. Therefore, the appeal was rejected because each may have his action against the other for non-performance. The consideration of this legal case of K. Murugesu v. Nadaraja 1980 is price.
What is the subject matter? Based on the Contract Act 1950, Section 155 talk about the termination of the agency, where the agency has an interest in the subject matter, where the agency has himself an interest in the property, which form the subject matter of the agency. The agency cannot, in the absence of an express contract, be terminated to the prejudice of such interest. In the contract law, principally, the subject matter of the sale is a goods. Goods which form the subject of the contract of the sale may be either existing good, owned or possessed by the seller, or goods to be manufacturing or acquired by the seller after making the contract of sale. In this act called future goods, this is usually the most important element in the contract of sale, because if the goods are not described precisely, confusion could result. Goods are generally things such as a chair, table, desk, car, or etc. that can be appreciated by a human being. Furthermore, the goods must be physically existent and belong to the seller, and also need to be in a good condition. In other words, the subject matter means in the cause, the object, or the thing dispute according to the case. The authority of a court to decide a particular type of the cases is called as subject, and the matter jurisdiction is set by the federal or the state constitution or by the state statutes. So, what is the subject matter based on the situation? The subject matter is a specific, where the subject matter is the classic automobile, because the property which the classic automobile is the belong to Mr. Jerry, and it meets all the categories in the contract of a sale. Besides that, it is a movable property that is easily moved from one place to another, and the property is already existent and not considered as a future goods.
Okay. So hi, assalamualaikum guys. So today I will proceed the discussion about this case study by inviting someone who will answer about the consensus ad idem. So I will let her join our video call. Wait. Okay. I hope our connection are okay.
Yeah.
Hi Nurul Balkis. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine.
Alhamdulillah. So, today I want to ask you about the consensus ad idem. So, I hope you will explain about the definition of the consensus ad idem, and is there consensus ad idem in this case study. So, I hope you will present it well.
Yeah, I will proceed the presentations, of course, by answering the question number 6. So, let's.
So, what is actually consensus ad idem? Consensus ad idem is actually derived from a Latin word which means a consent or agreement on the same thing. So, if you look in the Contract Act 1915, Section 13, it said that two or more persons, or we call it as a contracting parties, are said to consent when they agree upon the same thing in the same sense. In generally, the consensus ad idem is actually the agreements made by parties to identical terms to formation of a legally binding contract. In other words, it is the meeting of minds between the contracting parties, which means they must have a common intention, common sense, common the way of doing things, to accept or to undertake all of the contractual obligations to entering a contract, including the terms outlined in the contract. So in this case, yes, there are consensus ad idem between Mr. Jerry and Tom, which is first, Mr. Jerry made an offer to Tom, which is he want to sell one of his cars. He want to sell one of his classy automobiles to Tom with 100,000 ringgit. And once Tom accept the offer, it means that he is fully understand. He is agree of all the terms. He is freely consents of all the offer that made by Mr. Jerry. So this is where the consensus ad idem is occurred between them. Alright, so
Yeah, okay.
Bakis, I have another question, which is, can you tell me what kind of contract that have no consensus ad idem? Okay. So if they have no meeting of minds, which is they think differently, their intention differently, so there is no consensus and idiom between them, and there is no contract can be formed. For example, I have two horses, name is Ali and Habu. So I want to sell you one of my horses, which is Ali, but I offer you Ali, but you accept it as Abu. So there is no consensus and idiom between us. Alright? Right, so that's a lot of information that Balkis gave to us. So I want to thank to you, Balkis, because you joining me, you joining us. So I will end this call from now. Thank you to you, and thank you to you guys that watching us right now. So let's end this call, and bye. Assalamualaikum. Okay, waalaikumsalam. Bye.
Is it a free consent? Yes, it is a free consent because free consent is referred to an agreement when both parties knowingly and willingly enter into a contract of their own will. But if consent is gained by any of these means, the contract is considered void and enforceable by law. Free consent is one of essential valid contract mentioned in Contract Act 1915, Section 10. Is that the party should enter into contract with free consent. So refer to Contract Act 1915 Section 13 define the term of consent. According to this section, two or more persons are said to consent when they agree upon the same things in the same sense. Consensus at either agree upon the same things in the same sense at the same time. This is followed by Contract Act 1950 Section 14, which defines free consent. Consent is said to be free when it is not caused by coercion, Section 15, undue influence, Section 16, fraud, Section 17, misrepresentation, Section 18, mistake, Section 21, 22, and 23. Easy to say in order to render a contract voidable, it must be shown that the consent to an agreement was caused by one of vitiating factors, such as coercion, undue, and so on. For example, based on the cases, Tom accepted the offer without any coercion and intimidation.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. Today I'm gonna define about offer and acceptance. Offer is an explicit proposal contract which, if accepted, completes the contract and binds both of the person who made the offer and the person who accepted the offer of the term of the contract. Okay, to subsection A of Contracts Act 1950 provides that when a person signifies to another his willingness or to do something or abstain from doing anything with a view of obtaining the assent to other the act or abstinent, the person is said to make a proposal. Okay, let me give you an example. Okay, Mr. Jerry has 3 cars and he offered Tom one of his car for RM 100,000, and after that Tom replied, Mr. Jerry, I accept. Okay, here is Tom is defined as an acceptance. Acceptance occur when offering agreed to the mutual bonds to the contract by giving consideration or something value like money to seal the deal. Section 2 subsection B of Contracts Act 1950 said that when a person to whom the proposal is made signify his sense thereto, the proposal is said accepted. A proposal when accepted and becomes a promise. That's all, thank you.
Is it a valid acceptance? Yes, because in Section 2, Subsection B of the Contracts Act 1915 said, when a person to whom the proposal is made signifies his assent or consent thereto, the proposal is said to be accepted. A proposal, when accepted, becomes a promise. There also, Section 9 of the Contracts Act 1950 states that when the acceptance is made in words, the acceptance is expressed. When the acceptance is made other than in words, it is implied.
Who is the promisor and promisee in the above case study? A promisor is someone who makes a promise to a promisee. Contract law teaches whether a promisor is legally obligated to keep his promise. The person making the promise is called the promisor. The person to whom he makes the promise is a promisee. According to Contract Act 1915, Section 2, Subsection C, is the person making the proposal is called the promisor, and the person accepting the proposal is called the promisee, which is Mr. Jerry is promisor because he is the one person who making the proposal to Tom, and Tom is promisee because he is the person who accepted the proposal from Mr. Jerry.
That brings us to the end of the presentation. I like to summarize by saying the contract between Tom and Mr. Jerry is not valid until Tom paid Rm 100,000 to Jerry to get one of his cars. Thank you so much for your interest and attention. Thank you.